James Schramko here. Welcome back to my podcast. This is episode 1110. And today we're going to be talking about bottlenecks. I brought along my special guest, Lloyd Thompson from VirtualDOO, that's virtualdoo.com, to talk about this topic. G'day, Lloyd.
G'day, James. Thanks for having me. In fact, today is Valentine's Day, so I've donned a special red shirt. How about that?
I have not donned a special red or pink shirt, so I'm not sending out any incorrect signals or vibes. So diagnosing bottlenecks, it's a pretty interesting topic. I still remember one of the greatest books that I've ever read around this subject was by L.I. Goldratt, and it was on the topic of theory of constraints, and it was so eye-opening. I actually only read it after I'd quit my job, which was running a Mercedes-Benz dealership, but I'd wish I'd read it earlier. I'd certainly recognized some of the themes because I think probably people had transmuted some of the information into other sources, and some of the people I was learning from may have studied that. But when I went direct with it, it's like, oh my goodness. Like, the biggest takeaway for me was identify the real bottleneck, because sometimes there's fake bottlenecks, and when you're identifying them, sometimes you make a fix, but it doesn't get the result you're hoping for. And I had such a clear example of that in my SEO business. We kept getting more jobs, so we kept scaling people, but we could just never get on top of the work. And then we realized that we were not focusing on the right thing. At first, we thought the bottleneck was we didn't have enough team members to match the customers. But the real bottleneck was that we weren't completing the work within the rebuild period quickly enough, and then it piled up, and we couldn't catch it up for about 18 months. It was just escaping us. Once we figured out what the issue was, that there was the time to complete the job was the thing that needed to get a lid on it, then we were able to set up reporting and metrics around that. And this is kind of a preview as to the kind of topics we're going to be discussing today. But I'm really curious, Lloyd, when it comes to bottlenecks and things that are holding back businesses, I wonder if you could categorize them for me based on the type of clients you've been serving.
Well, generally the customers that are coming to me they're generally either moving away from pain or they're trying to get closer towards their vision. I would say most are really trying to get away from pain, and that that's what it is. I mean, the first one would be they're just stuck in their business. They've got no time. They're working really long days. They just struggle to let go of the reins, and they think that, well, they're not confident that if they do hand over and delegate, if they do step away from their business, that things will just carry on and be fine. And they just don't have that level of confidence because perhaps the systems aren't set up right. So that's the first area, is time. The second one, somewhat related, is really operational chaos. So they might have a great offer and they might have customers coming in, but if the back end of their system, if they're, behind the doors, things might be on fire. And I've seen many great businesses that are run off adrenaline in the back end.
It seems like the curse of a visionary.
I think so. I mean,
it's a common scenario that, like, absolutely brilliant person, creative ideas, can put together deals and have great relationships and see things other people miss, but have trouble getting the traction. Like, they're just spinning their wheels all the time.
And they're trying to do all the things, but trying to wonder what is the 1, 2, 3 things that are really going to move the needle the most. So operational chaos is another one. And then probably a bit further closer to the vision end, in the more sort of happier place scenario, is they're looking to exit their business. And I mean, it might be that they're exiting their business because, oh my God, I'm trying to get out of this. I don't want to do this anymore. But in order to exit their business, they can't really sell their business for a high value if their business is them running the business. They need to be able to step out of the business, have someone else run it, because an investor, someone buying their business, does not want to buy a job. They want to buy a working business. So people looking to exit.
I'm thinking on that topic, the biggest exits that I've seen with my clients are always software. And in the top 2 or 3, it was where they were technical people. They weren't your classic visionary where I was actually helping them was to input them more on the visionary equation. They were good technical people, but they often would overthink things or have too much bureaucracy or overstructure things, and they needed to be kind of broken down and then reassembled and step away from it. And when you're a hardcore programmer and you're running a software business, like imagine Mark Zuckerberg in the very early days, there must have been a point where he had to stop doing some of the coding. Same with Bill Gates, actually. There's a theme here. Nerds owning the world. There's a point where they have to step back from the keyboard and then engage smarter people in them and build systems around it. And it must be a hard transition for them.
Well, I do see that kind of client quite a bit, actually. And I think that leads to the fourth one is growth. So the last one is they are growing, they've got a good business, but perhaps because of how they've hired or inefficiency of how their systems are running, perhaps it's because of how their system might be using their CRM or anything like that, they just can't scale. And some of these people, they've started a great business, but they might not know how to run systems and team efficiently. And so that's where we come in.
And when you say that's where we come in, what does that typically look like? And by the way, I totally get that people come in pain more often than they come for the, there's not that many people doing the prevention thing. And it's never been so clear to me as my current focus on health and fitness. I'm putting the work in on my health and fitness as a prevention because you have to pay anyway. You either pay in advance or pay later. You pay for the good food and the gym subscription now and the sweat, or you pay later in the hospital bed with the hardcore pharmaceutical meds, right? And I'd rather do the organic upfront way. It takes a lot of discipline to be that business owner to say, you know what, I'm going to get help before things are off the tracks. I'm going to get help before there's a train wreck. I'm going to get some eyes on and some experience to see if they can help me take this thing further than I have been able to get it myself. So I applaud those people for the discipline it takes, and I can relate to that.
I like that analogy because when I also think about what you said earlier about looking at bottlenecks and finding the right bottleneck, it might be very tempting to engage someone to come in and help and think that you know what the problem is and just get involved and start fixing. And in some circumstances, very specifically where the problem was super obvious and they just needed someone to come in and do it, we have done that. But it's much better to come in and have a look at everything and find out what the real bottleneck is or what the real priority order is, as you say, because otherwise you're just going to fix the wrong thing. So that's why when we start working with people, we do an operations health assessment. We come in, takes about a month, try to wrap it up in under a month. And we'll talk to the team and we'll look at how they use the systems. And we talk to the founder regularly and we say each week, hey, this is what we're seeing so far. These are the opportunities. And then that gives them a bit of a choose your own adventure as to say, okay, I hear what you've said about this problem. I find this one a bit more interesting and valuable right now. So that by the time we've completed our assessment of the business and we come back to them with a list of things which are prioritized by effort and impact, the founder's got value in the things that there's so much surface area you can cover in a business. They've got value by us focusing on the areas that have been, they've said, oh yeah, these are the areas that we really, really need help on. So that's how we do it, working with the team, working with the founder.
I think to your point about being an external party is such an advantage. I remember very clearly when I was in charge of the motor dealership at Mercedes-Benz dealership, I was in charge of the service department, of course, and the client would often come in and tell the service advisor what's wrong with their car and what needs fixing. The service advisor would make notes on the job card. It's called an RO for anyone who's curious, a repair order. And then they'd go out to the technician, which is a modern way of saying mechanic, and the technician would get the keys to the car and put it up on the hoist and then start work. But the technician would basically throw it all out the window, just ignore what the customer's diagnosis is. in the same way, when you go to the doctor and you start telling the doctor, because you've checked Mr. Google or Mr. ChatGPT's diagnosis, you start telling them what your problem is and what they need to prescribe you, they're going to say, I'm the doctor here. Let me just ask you some questions. Let me make the diagnosis based on my years of medical training and awareness of protocols and potentially some of the other things that you may not have considered. And then I will prescribe you what I think as a professional you need. And this is such a common thing. I think the Band-Aid patch for business owners is often to self-diagnose and repair what they think the issue is. And it's such an advantage having an outsider who has got knowledge to come in. And this is something that comes up a lot. This is one of the big differences between your VirtualDOO.com versus hiring an operations person is when you hire an operation person, you're getting one person's experience and, you know, over their whole career. It should be comprehensive, but it cannot compete with working with multiple clients for multiple years with multiple operations. The amount of information you gather, it's like putting a set of Encyclopedia Britannica up against ChatGPT or Google. Like it's vastly different access to resource. And that's, so when you come in, you probably know things to look for that the business owner doesn't even know about.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, and also in my business, we've got a number of operators. So when we see something, I might go back to my team and say, oh, hang on, we've got a really interesting scenario here. Has anyone seen something exactly like this before? How did we resolve it? Because we've got, I mean, everyone's an operations expert, but there's going to be people who have got more experience in certain areas and certain industries. So we're able to reuse a lot of our experience with our clients. Yeah.
It's like what we do in the weekly mentor calls in my James Schramko mentor program. When there's someone on the call who knows more about something than I do, I love to let them contribute. I've got a member at the moment who's doing more than $1 million a month, and that's significantly more than the same time last year. And you know, his insights are very handy in relation to the things that he's been able to deploy to get that result that the other members are learning from. And same as I've got members who are world-class experts at email conversions. I've got members who have been quadrupling their membership business on a low ticket subscription, which is really fascinating. These things all translate. And of course, I'm the beneficiary of all this information as well. Goes into my little pot of resource. But it's very important, and it dates back way back to the original mastermind concept, to be able to have a little pool of people to share their brains to solve one problem. That's what you bring to the table. Let's step through a couple of typical scenarios that come out of some of the audits you might have done. You don't have to mention names, but let's break down by category that a few use cases you've discovered in case someone listening to this can relate to it and might be able to glean some insights from it.
Yeah. So I'll give you a sort of an overview of our assessment from a high level, and then I'll relate. So first of all, we're going to start with vision, values, and accountability. And I think when a lot of people hear, oh, visions and values, they think, oh, that's fluffy stuff. Like, do I really need to do that? And in mine, I'm thinking of an SEO business we work with. And when we asked the founder for their vision, he said, I want, this business should be a white glove, high touch, premium, quality brand. We're really looking after our customers at every step of the way, very involved. The team hadn't seen that vision. And I mean, we asked that because we want to help them get towards their vision. But the team hadn't even seen his vision. So they're optimizing more for throughput rather than high touch. So that's the first thing. So just making sure that they've got that, everyone knows what they're trying to achieve so that they can row in the same direction. Values is another really important one because for us, this is about hiring, attracting, and repelling. We want to make sure we're bringing into our tribe the people we know we want in our tribe based on the characteristics and see if they fit our tribe. And we want to repel people who do not fit in, both clients actually and team, based on those values. And when I spoke to that particular client, he had 10 values written down. And I thought, 10? This was done out of a workshop a couple of years before. he had to consult that list to know what his 10 values were. So there's no chance that his team know what those values are. 10's too many. I would say, 3 to 5 is a nice
3
number.
to 5 is the often quoted number, and that sits right in the range of where we are too. I know you've shared yours before, and one of them was fun.
Yeah, heart and humor actually is one of them. It needs to be something you really buy into, like rather than just filling it with guff.
But it also informs decisions. So, for example, you might be familiar. We have my wife and I co-founded Vision Find recruitment business to find Philippines VAs. A couple of years ago, we incorporated that company in the Philippines because it's part of the values. The whole purpose of that business, whilst from the surface you might think that it was just to serve entrepreneurs, but really what my wife's very passionate about, helping Filipinos have opportunities, job opportunities, and to put that money back into their community. And by establishing the company in the Philippines, it's then able to pay tax in the Philippines and support local projects with more clout than an offshore company. So that's like when you're coming up to strategic decisions, having values, like what does it mean to be in this business? What does it mean to be a part of this mission that we're on? And those 3 to 5 concepts will inform how you hire, how you train, how you fire, and how you make bigger strategic decisions for the business.
It's like the backbone of performance management. And you can go into a team and assess people based on, you can just have your 3 to 5 values, and you can have a list of your team, and you can find out very quickly whether the people belong in your tribe or not. So that's why I start with vision, values, and accountability.
How often would you go into a business and all the team members know what the values are and embody them? Has it ever happened?
I don't think it's ever happened.
Yeah,
I mean, it's exceptionally rare. They might know what the values are. That's common. Like a good company will have
their... It's not just corporate bullshit. It's like an actual thing, right?
Yeah. Like, and if it's done properly, it should be used when you're giving people feedback. Like if there is a performance issue, you should be tying it to a value. If there's an opportunity, it links like, okay, we are artists as one. We treat our work like an art, and I want that individualism. I want that importance of that work to come through so that it is an art rather than work. So if I see something positive, I will call it out. This is what art looks like. I want to have that called out and broadcast in the open. I'm so proud of this achievement. This is art. If it's something that's to the contrary of that, I'm going to have a conversation in private and say, look, this is the behavior we want to repel because this is the value that we want here. It's so important.
It's the same when I have a new person and I was training them and they submit work that doesn't meet the standard, then I could talk about the standard, like what the standard is and how that standard came to be about and how that aligns with our values. And like we still have a minimum standard. Even today, anything on social media that we post is put into a document prior and sent into a for approval channel, and it would be judged against our values. If it doesn't meet our brand guideline or our communication values, then it will be scuttled basically at that point. It won't go live.
The final biggie in this category is accountability. And this is a major one. And there's a few different ways to look at this. I'll just give a high level. We're going to see, is the accountability clear in a team of who owns what? And there might be multiple people responsible for doing work, but there needs to be one person who's responsible for an area, somebody who owns it. So if you look at it from a process point of view, it's one person who's responsible for making sure that process gets done. It might be if they go on holiday, they're still going to make sure there's someone who's going to carry on executing it. Or there's a procedure that needs to be updated, they're going to make sure that happens. And so there's multiple ways of ensuring that accountability is clear and not muddied, because if two people are accountable for something, nobody is. And quite often, this is one of the major problems in getting stuff done, because there's just lack of clarity. The founder's not sure something's going to happen if they're not there, and the team aren't entirely clear on what they're accountable for and what they're not. And so there's all sorts of ways to look at this, but it might be an org chart with your accountabilities on it. It might be a process flow of how the money enters the organization all the way through until it hits the bank account, and making sure there's clear accountability and processes all the way through. And it might be a a list of your SOPs with a clear accountable owner against each of them. So there's a number of things, and that's just the surface of what you can do with accountability, and it's incredibly valuable. So when we've gone into a business, we often see that accountability is pretty loose, and tightening that up can make a big difference to performance.
This one's dear to my heart. My second last mission was to turn around an underperforming dealership. It was a new dealership, like physical premises was new. They had lots of resource, but they had really bad staff, and they were coming last in the customer satisfaction index. So I realized that that was a result of just basically really inefficient handoffs and unclear processes. So what I did is I got representatives from every single step of the journey, from someone signing up a car to when it's delivered and you're waving goodbye, right? And there are some critical things that have to happen. It's extremely complex. Like one, for example, you have to register the vehicle, which triggers tax. You have to pay, tax to the government for that registration. You have to pay the manufacturer back for the car that's sitting on your floor plan, right? It's like a loan. They've loaned you this car, and then when you sell it and you get paid for it, you have to pay them back. If you don't, it's called conversion, and it could be basically like bouncing a check, or it's almost theft, really. And then the other thing is you actually have to get paid by the customer for the car successfully, so that when they drive off, if there's no money, it's kind of a big deal if the car's worth $300,000. So I sat them all in a room and I said, let's map out every single step from signing up to delivery, what happens to this car. And we put it all, I think we put it up on Post-it notes, and then we put all the Post-it notes in order. And then we have a look, are there any unnecessary steps or delays here that don't make sense? Because, crazy stuff happens. If you buy a car and you want floor mats or windows tinted, that has to be put into the, you've got to get a purchase order for parts. They have to requisition a mat. They have to give it to somebody. It has to be put in the car. It has to be pre-delivered. It has to go through the workshop. Have to have number plates screwed on. There was one point when I was a salesperson that I was screwing in center console armrests. If the customer upgraded, I would have to go to parts. I have to go to accounts and get a purchase order, go to parts and get the armrest, go to the delivery bay with a screwdriver and start pulling apart a brand new Mercedes-Benz and installing bits to it. And then I'd get a Stanley knife and I'm starting to cut out rubber floor mats. I'm like, this is insane. And I'm in like my fine suit, my watch, my pen, my Rolex. I was like all fancy, except I'm there with a Stanley knife cutting up rubber floor mats. And so all these thoughts came to the point where I need to create a system. And we ended up getting all of the steps onto one page, and then we put boxes around each section. It was like accounting department, and then it went off to parts, and then service, and then finance, and then the sales manager, and then the final one was sign off for delivery. And each one had a checkbox, and we printed them off on a piece of paper, and we stuck it onto a deal pack. And in the deal pack, we put all the forms you need when you sell a car. We put the registration forms, the sales contract order, the requisition for parts, the service slip, all in one pack. So next time you sell a car, you just grab a pack and you start ticking boxes. And if all the boxes were ticked, then the sales manager could sign it off for delivery, and you knew that it was paid for, that everything that was ordered was on it, that it was on time, and everything happened. We went from last to first.
Wow.
But smooth, streamlined process, less mistakes, less cars delivered without being paid for. Like, that's your worst nightmare. You're driving home and they're like, did we get paid for that car that was delivered this afternoon? Like, it's such a big risk, high stakes game.
We quite often find that there are processes, but it's just unclear who's owning it. So it just gets lost.
Yeah.
And in the case of that SEO business I was talking about, there was someone who was trying to juggle being an operations manager and doing the delivery himself. I'm thinking, how's that going to work when things heat up? And that was exposed doing the accountability mapping. So, it's very important first step.
What's the next category?
Yeah, so the next one is time. Like, we're looking at the founder or business owner and we're trying to think, where are they spending their time? And what gives them energy? Do they want to continue? And what do they want to get rid of? And it's surprising. We find a lot of business owners are doing stuff that could easily be handed off, that we find they're doing administration that they shouldn't be doing. So we're looking at all of these things that are on their plate. We're thinking, okay, is this something that can be automated? And that's certainly becoming a lot more relevant with AI now. It's becoming a lot easier to do. Is it something that can be automated? Is it something that can be delegated to the team? Is there a gap in who it could be delegated? Like, do they have the budget to hire for someone that would fit into this role? Or is it something that we can own temporarily until we've managed to figure out like what the proper true goal is here, so that we can eventually make ourselves redundant so that the team can completely and autonomously run it? And so when I think of this piece, we work with a person who was in the education business, selling high ticket courses, and he was on stage selling his product. And then during COVID, he transitioned to doing webinars in all these different time zones. And what we found with him is he was spending a lot of his time running meetings with his team, which was emotionally exhausting to him, and physically exhausting and emotionally exhausting. And so actually in that case, the most valuable thing we could do is just put one person between him and the team. And that was only exposed when we do the time audit, like, well, okay. And so that was discovered in the audit, but then when we went on to actually doing the implementation, we were able to completely pull him out of the operation. And for him, it meant that he not only got more time back, but for him, he actually got his health back because he could go to the gym and feel happier. So simple exercise auditing time, but huge impact.
It's super draining for those like the performer type to have to be doing team stuff, and it's the Achilles heel because they can grow the business like crazy, but it can never keep up. It just collapses behind them, and they're constantly. It's like trying to drag a rowboat to shore with a rope, and it just gets stuck on the sand. You just can't take it any further. You've got all that energy expended, and they're not coming with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll be quick about the next one because there's a lot in this one. But the next piece is about operational smoothness, and I summarize that into 3 parts. What are the rhythms? What are they measuring in terms of their dashboards? And what are the feedback loops? So if I think about a large e-commerce that we work with, there wasn't really rhythms or proper meetings that they were running, or efficient ones. They would have a regular meeting with almost the whole company very regularly that would end up into a bit of a chat fest. So we look at what rhythms they're running and pare it down so they only need just the right people in there doing the right things. So we're just having a look at what the rhythms are that run the business. And then we look at, are they measuring what are they measuring? Are they measuring the right things? Are they measuring stuff that actually is not relevant or just taking up time to measure? Because we want to get some signals. Are they red or are they green? So we're looking at what they're measuring in the business. And then the final piece is feedback loops. So if I think about this e-commerce customer, the founder was in there. He was selling us this product worldwide, great business, couple of factories that do manufacturing, and also he can ship directly out of there. And for him, he is just every day trying to be on meetings all the way through with the business, and then campaigns that are being run. So they're going to have, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Easter, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, all of these different things. But there wasn't really a reoccurring pattern, a process for it. And this stuff is not actually the thing that a lot of these founders enjoy. Rhythms, dashboards, and feedback loops quite often kills their soul, but they feel like it's a necessary evil that they need to do. So when we go in and we look at how they're running their business in the health assessment, we're able to see, okay, well, we can see whether we could pull the founder out of this, or we can see that this rhythm is not quite right, or they're missing this one. And in the case of this founder of the e-commerce, we were able to pull him out of most of those operational rhythms so that he was able to focus in his zone of genius. And for him, it actually didn't mean that he was out of the business. We thought it would be that he would be, having more time, but for him, actually, it just meant that he would spend his time doing creatives, which he loved doing, and he still was doing the long
and building relationships with, with the next wave of endorsers and brand advocates.
Oh, and influencers, and
Yep.
And he managed.
He enjoyed
to get
the most, I think.
Yeah, and he do the stuff with the influencers, and he managed to get a retail deal. So all because he got himself out of doing the rhythms and dashboards and feedback loops. And then so the last area is about growth. So a lot of these businesses are growing so fast that it means that there is operational inefficiency. And so we have another area that we focus on. And just for our audit, we're looking particularly have another area which is under the banner of revenue ops, or RevOps for short. And we're looking at how the people and the processes and the tools and the data are working together in their CRM, and how sales and marketing or account manager, the people who are really looking at the front end of the deals with the customers, how that's all working. And so there's a lot of examples here, but if I just think of a simple one that we identified in a operational assessment, is we could see that there was a business, it was a coaching business, and that their marketing team was warming up the clients, and this would eventually result in either a personalized email conversation, or it would be a booked call. And then, so this gets handed over to sales, and then sales are trying to keep this conversation going, have these meetings. But by the end of a period of time, if that's not converted, that lead would just disappear and fall off the planet, which is a huge, the cost of acquisition is huge. And so just doing an assessment there saying, well, you've got sales and marketing, they're both using the CRM, but there's no process that connects these two together, is something that we could quickly identify. And so the result was, when we went in and did the remediation with them, we were able to say, well, actually, in 60 days, if sales haven't closed that deal, it's going to get flipped back to marketing, and marketing will warm that back up. And after 2 months, the benefit of doing that paid for our fees. You know, we were basically covered in terms of just that piece of effort. So sometimes it's a simple fix. And so just having a look at what they've done there in terms of RevOps, just a little, where are you in terms of your maturity, can yield some big results.
One way that I track that is about every 12 weeks, I ask mentor clients for an update, a review, and then we have a look at the change in the value of the business, which I simplistically look at a multiple of profit just as a benchmark. But I always think of revenue optimization is, you know, can we extract more profit from this business, either more profit from what we're doing now, or can we add more and increase the profit that way? But ultimately, if we were to take a multiple of that profit and treat it as the value of the business, so I'm looking for that number to move up, and the actions that we're doing move in that direction. I'm curious, when you're building dashboards and looking at project management systems, are there any particular solutions that you keep encountering?
I quite often see that it's pretty loose in terms of their system. So you talked in the beginning about identifying the bottleneck, like seeing these workflows as they flow through. Quite often we see, well, something was assigned or moved along in the pipeline, but it wasn't assigned to someone, or it's not clear what done actually means in this pipeline. So it might be, what's the criteria for done? It might be a number of true statements. It might be, for a software business, is this thing actually live? But some people, done meant, oh, it was just developed, it wasn't actually tested. So I see the biggest thing that I see is lack of clarity. And if you set those pipelines up very well, and it's very clear who it's handed over and when it's done and what the due date is, a lot of these things can be really cleaned up.
Are you seeing any shift between live meetings and async, like Loom videos or Slack huddles?
I mean, what we try and do a lot is get rid of unnecessary meetings. So there is a lot that can be done async. So I am a huge advocate of using Loom when you can, and because that also carries the tone. And one of the problems I've seen with people when they do use async and do it poorly is that someone might be just sending a message to someone else, and then someone else reads that and they read the tone of the message incorrectly, and they flare up a bit and they start messaging backwards and forwards. So yes, I do see further trend in terms of async. I try to encourage people to use Loom more and more, and that can get rid of a lot of meetings if it's done well. So it carries the tone. I can just show my screen. I've got my face in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm saying this is what's happening. So yes, certainly more and more of a move towards async.
I noticed in our own workplace, we have an enormous amount of direct messages, which means it's probably fairly efficient because it's not tying up everybody else in a channel or holding everyone on a call. I used to think of that, if you had 10 people on a call and you have them there for an hour, you've got 10 times their hourly wage is the cost of that meeting. It has to be a pretty damn good meeting. And some of the ways that people deal with that is like Bezos. He writes a memo before the meeting and makes sure everyone gets to the meeting. It has to be relevant to them, but then they spend the first part of the meeting reading the memo on the basis that they probably won't have had time, or they'll just rush it. So they sit there and read the memo together, and then the meeting's really crisp. And I think that's brilliant. And also he's probably done a lot of work in terms of reducing the time it takes to get feedback in the business. If someone's in the meeting, it shouldn't be there. They should just leave. It's fine. They shouldn't be there. I think meetings are a legacy from old bureaucracy habits that will almost inevitably die in the modern era. Since 2000, it would appear that regular businesses are discovering the things that people like me have been using for more than a decade. And I remember having this conversation with my uncle, and he's in a very large company, and they have their way of doing things. And I was explaining to him about Dropbox and Slack and Loom, and he was like, wow, this is really interesting. But then it all became reality. This was about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see a lot of meetings being replaced by async. I mean, some people, and I use this a lot myself, I send people audio messages, and some people will love it and some people hate it. And one thing I like about Slack, which is what I use internally, is that when I send someone an audio message, they can choose whether they listen to it or they just read the transcript. But I like to send the audio message, one, because it's quicker, two, because it carries the tone. And then in terms of meetings, just what you were saying there about Jeff Bezos, like if we're finding that there's meetings and there's people that shouldn't be there, we're going to identify that and say, look, you only need to have the core people that are going to be there that need to solve the problem, and anyone else can go. And if there's above, I think Jeff Bezos calls it the 2 pizza rule, which if there's more people than 2 pizzas, that's too many people. They shouldn't be. There's too many people. If you have too many people in a meeting, it's not going to go anywhere. So there's a certain max to.
I always adapted the Philippines to 1 pizza because they kind of eat like sparrows. What about Toyota and their pool system? I think that's quite interesting because some people tend to overload their teams, too many tasks, too many leads for a salesperson, too many jobs for the web developer, and then they just get buried. And one thing that I found is often they haven't got a concept of 80-20. They don't know how to prioritize tasks, so they just go in order of arrival, which is disastrous. So I've taught my team to Pareto principle tasks. Firstly, I'm really conscious to not overload them. I want more of a just-in-time system. Like my team are working on a project right now. We've cloned my website, and I want to be in a position where I can go to the market and say to the market, let me help you build a successful membership. I've been doing it for 15 years. I know all about it. I've worked hand in glove with the platform that I use, kleq.com, to build all the things I need in it. And now, just to make sure you're successful, I'm going to give you a copy of my website for you to start with. So that's got actually everything that I've got in my website except for the customer names and the actual content. You just got to add your own expertise, change the words, put your own stuff. But it's laid out and structured exactly as mine because it's a duplicate. And that's what I want to go to market. So my team right now are just cleaning up that clone to be ready to deploy an instance for, say, a mentor client. They come on, I might be able to get them up and running much quicker. I want them to get a result quickly. I know I can charge a lot for it. I'll probably charge $5,000 or $10,000 for this. And I'm still open to how I'm going to bring it to the market, but I'm testing it at the moment on a couple of mentor clients. And so my team are doing that project. So while they're doing that project, I won't bomb them with other projects because what could that possibly achieve? It's going to stop them halfway through an important task to try and do this other thing. And if I was like a typical visionary, smashing them with new tasks every day and then getting frustrated with them, why don't they ever finish anything? Why don't they know what they should be working on? Why don't they just think for themselves? Why we got 15 projects that aren't finished yet? Well, have a look in the mirror, pal. And I hear this so often from leaders. Just today, right? You know, I've got a recruitment business, Vision Find. Just got a brief of someone. This is what they want their team member to do. They want someone who can post to social media, reply to all comments, do thumbnails for YouTube, book podcasts, things, look after all the socials and keep them up to date, and do like 5 other things. I'm like, geez, that's an entire team of 5 people. That's not a one-person thing. And so I think there's a massive gap between what visionary founders expect their team to be able to do and what the team member might be able to do. And that can be addressed by adding things in slowly as they build up to speed to see what they're capable of. And then there's other methods that I've used too. When I've had multiple people doing the same role, especially salespeople, but in the past I've had 5 article writers, I've had 6 link builders, etc. You can benchmark between the team and see who's the fastest or does the best work, and then discover what it is they're doing and then share that process across to the others. But loading them up with too many tasks is a common one.
And I see that many founders just shout down the hole and expect it done, and they don't have any visibility of actual what the work is. And then the team don't have they don't know what their actual priority is, and so then they end up with this task whiplash where they're just getting constantly redirecting, and there's a cost to that. Like every time you have to pick up a different piece of work, that context switching cost is huge because you have to put it down, park what you were doing, pick up a new piece. It doesn't just happen instantly. People don't understand if they're looking at if they're doing any kind of time reporting or anything. They don't understand all the time's gone, because you're going to lose easily 20% just from context switching if you're changing context a lot, if you're moving from task A to task B. And priority is really important in that case. My team member lets me know at the end of every day. I've got my little office manager and who works fully remote, and he just lets me know what his priority lists are. And sometimes I'll just say, I'll switch that. I don't give him too many things. And sometimes it's surprising what he thought the priority was. It's like, oh, actually, I thought it was this. Okay,
well, the ultimate example of this I saw, we had at one point, we had a lot of websites. We had 1,000 websites, and there was a WordPress update. And so I had 2 people full-time in my web dev team just looking after our own websites. And it was time to go and update this security patch for WordPress, which was a critical update because apparently hackers could get into your files, right? And I asked them, how are you going to approach this? And they were working their way through the websites alphabetically. And I said, let me ask you a question. Of the 1,000 websites, are there any that are more important than others? And they're like, oh, well, Superfast Business, I guess, is the most important, or Silver Circle, because they were my brands at that time. I said, yes, but they're a long way down the list, right? They're at S. You're not going to get there for like 2 weeks. Why don't we do them first? Why don't we reorganize the list based on relationship to profit for the business? Like, which one would we least like to get hacked, and work down that list? And they're like, I'm like, so that's how we need to look at it. So a couple of things happened there. Firstly, I didn't send them over a request to update all the websites by the one we would like to lose the least first. I didn't give them the clearest instruction that I could have, which would have me been doing the thinking and not having them learn this thinking process. But at the same time, they just saw there was an update and just set about doing it the way that they would have always done it. And if you had 2 websites, it wouldn't really matter. You have 1,000, it makes a big difference.
That's an important point. You used a coaching approach there, obviously. And
yes,
a lot of founders, because they're so stuck in the weeds, it's not easy to do. If you're there and you've got all of these tasks coming at you, they're just going to go do this, hammer. They can't. And coaching takes time and patience. And so having someone who does have time and patience to do it is often a huge benefit.
You've got to be calm. And I like to ask myself a question, like, what would a calm and reasonable, caring, nice boss, how would they approach this situation? Like, if you might be angry, I think, why on earth wouldn't they have thought of that? Like, what are they doing? Normally, founders just going to scream at them. And then before too long, the person's got a foot out the door and starts phoning it in. And then there's a new expression, quiet quitting.
Yeah.
That's the new way of saying phoning it in for people who weren't around when we actually worked on the phone. Remember when we had phones in the house, like a landline? Gee, dating myself here. But yeah, they switch off and then they're on to the next thing. And then they wonder why the team members leave or don't feel motivated or excited or happy for the business, because they're being screamed at and shouted at. It's not really a conducive work environment. And I've met some toxic founders who are so abhorrent with their team, and they still don't even get it. They don't understand why this is happening, and it fascinates me.
And on that topic, I mean, I've quite often delivered, or my team has delivered, some very frank and honest, this is what we found and this is what you should do about it. And sometimes the founder does not want to hear that. And it's often the best thing that we need to tell them is this is how it's working with the team and how it needs to change. But it's the honest and right thing to do.
This is why you can't be someone's best friend if you're their coach or mentor, because they're going to, you'll compromise both of you if you want to try and please the other. Sometimes you have to say what needs to be said and point it out. I had a client recently being somewhat manic, like rapid fire posts that sort of had a scent of desperation, and I checked in on them because I was concerned. And I can spot manic behavior. I've worked with and been around manic people, and from a bipolar hypermania type, I recognized the pattern, and so I was able to step in there. But you can't dance around it, really. Say, look, I've observed this situation. I'm just checking in to see if everything's okay. And it wasn't. And I was able to make some suggestions. But you have to confront that sort of stuff as soon as you see it, or it just gets worse.
We see a lot where, and it's a difficult situation, but sometimes people have brought in friends into their business or relatives, and they know there's a challenge there in how it's running, but they don't want to be the person to tell them, or they want an external perspective. And then we say, oh yeah, we're seeing this, this, we can see that there's an issue here or there's performance here when we're actually working. And so just sometimes they're not, they might see it and they need someone to just validate it, or sometimes they're just not sure. But having someone else from outside sort of tell them how it really is. I've had the
same thing. Like, I ask people, do they love their brand, or who owns it? And I often find compromises. Or do they have a trademark? I often get, no, I don't love my brand. No, I'm just trading as just a person. Like, there's no entity and nothing's trademarked. I'm like, well, this is like an urgent situation. In fact, someone else has trademarked your brand that you're trading as. So you might want to think about switching or locking it down, like if that's something you're passionate about. And that's like, it's not fun to have that conversation, but that's exactly why I'm there. I do have one more question I want to ask you, because it really can't be overlooked at this point in history. When you're doing systems and tools and automations and delegations and efficiencies and stuff, do you have a little look at how your clients are using AI tools? Because I do now. That's one of the questions in my diagnostic. How are you using AI in your business? I just feel like you're not going to get much further down the track now unless you embrace and understand this.
I mean, when we're looking at all of the processes, if we can see, okay, they've already got an automated process, and especially with the arrival of something like GPT operator and all of the many things that are going to clone that, it's going to be very easy, much easier than it was before, to take a process that's just following a list of steps and hand it over to AI. So when we look through those steps, we just flag, like, this one looks like it's an easy one, this one looks like it. And this will only become more and more apparent over time. Like, it will become more, for anyone following GPT operator right now and just Googling that, they'll see what I mean.
I reckon it'll be so core that it will just one of your standard streams. It'll be AI systemization implementation will be part of your service deliverables, is my guess. You probably have a couple of operators who are familiar with it. Apparently there are tools like Replit now. You can just go and tell it in plain words what app you need, and it starts building it for you. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, I'm seeing, us just talking to an e-commerce business owner last week, and he's already seeing that some of the work he's done with customer service will be easily replaced by AI.
I just saw a sales tool, which is getting a bit of a rap at the moment by the FTC, I think, but it's a voice sales tool, and it can clone a voice, and it's 95% there, I think. It even builds in ums and ahs, but the only tell is that there's a bit of a delay between when someone says something and when it responds. but it's almost indistinguishable from a human. But you'd have to think that within a year from now, it'll be insanely fast and powerful. So it will be a part of many aspects of a business. I'm certainly paying attention to it. In fact, right now, what I'm doing is taking a very proactive approach with my team. You know how you had that artist value?
Oh, we are artists. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a ninja good value. We're ninja good, which means like we're just at a high level with the stuff we're doing. So my team are out there building apps to help our business in the background that are currently like they're in black box skunk works phase. They're not for the public. They're not going to be sold. I'm not going to be selling a SaaS at this point. It's just for our own use. In the same way that I've used my own engines that I've created with GPTs in the background of my business to empower me and give me a moat over anyone else. I've got the most powerful tool set, but I'm not giving access to it. Certainly not slapping some chatbot on the homepage of my website, which I don't think is a good idea or that valuable. And so we're just embracing it. They've got their sleeves rolled up. We're diving into this stuff. We've got test results that look extremely positive. And it allows us to create the most incredible iceberg. There's the part that the public sees, and then there's all the rest. And that's really the future. I think a lot of businesses will build stuff behind the scenes, and they'll be slimming down teams. They won't cop bad employee performance. They'll slow down on the hiring. And any systems or inefficiencies that are there right now, I think they're a massive opportunity to get into this and clean it up. But you can't do any of that unless you know the lay of the land to start with. That's why I like your high level approach with that audit, to get in there and just say, here's what you've got. How does someone book an audit with you, Lloyd?
Yeah, if they just want to reach out to me at Lloyd@virtualdoo.com, or just head to my website, virtualdoo.com. They'll be able to contact me there. And also giving away my book for free to find that. So if someone wants to find out more about what we do, they can get that from virtualdoo.com/book.
virtualdoo.com/book. In full disclosure, Lloyd is a partner of mine. I've been really enjoying watching his transition from bank employee to agency mogul. But I just enjoy working with you, Lloyd, because you have such a good work ethic, such good values. It's the values that attracted me to you in the first place.
Oh, thanks, James.
And you know, like if you're picking long-term partners, you have to align with people who you think you could be in business with for a long time. And that's a good sort of working example of being adjustable and navigating a changing landscape. But I see a rosy future for operations because you can't grow a business beyond a solopreneur without at some point confronting the operation side of it. So great work. All the people you've helped that I've sent you to as well give me tremendous confidence in what you've been doing.
Thanks, Jane. You know, there was one more comment I just wanted to make there, which he talks about values. And a lot of people, when they make a mistake when they're hiring, they focus a lot too much on skill in the beginning, but you've got to have both the values and the skill. And now so much of the area that was in the skill that they would have been doing can be automated. So I think if anything, this should really magnify the importance of the values. I mean, it should have always been there, but these are the people you're going to work with. You might be working with less people now. It's been automated. So really focusing on the values of those people you work with. And as you said, James, I love working with you. It's a great partnership. And I think we've got...
I was down at one of the local produce shops getting some super high quality food, right? Like grass-fed, grass-finished beef and like really high quality, locally produced milk that's been unfucked with. And you pay a premium for that. But that's where I think humans will be in the short term. Good quality humans will be like organic food. It'll be a highly prized connection. And there's hope for humanity, because what I am seeing is people are sliding a bit too much into the automation phase of sort of checking out. Like when you see people's bot comments and stuff and rubbish, trash produced content just smashing out there, you think, okay, there's actually less humans interacting here. This is more bots, and people will retreat from that and recognize true value when they get it. Which is why I love doing our in-person podcasts, over the internet. But we're recording this as humans rather than a faceless. There's a massive trend. Have you seen a faceless video channel trend? And faceless content, faceless Instagram channels, they're all just mass produced, and art is cheapening to some extent. So keep up the good human stuff, Lloyd. And that's I saw you out to dinner with other people, you're keeping your face in the game and connecting, and that's one of your super skills. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Lots to learn from lots of other people too, so I appreciate that.
All right. Well, there you go. This is episode 1110.
Wow.
Up on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and on our blog at jamesschramko.com. If you're listening to this and you think you want help with operations, Lloyd is your guy. If you'd like me to mentor you, then check out jamesschramko.com. I've got a couple of programs there, and one of them as low as $10 for 10 days. You can ask me whatever you want in a progress journal, and I'll answer it for you and see if you think I'm good enough to take you from that point. Catch you on the next one.
This is James Schramko.